Welcome to the Wealth Wisdom, where money has history and knowledge becomes power.
Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that the money in your wallet, your bank account, your life savings, no longer had any real value. Imagine realizing that the bills you thought represented wealth were nothing more than decorated paper, ink, symbols, and a promise. A promise backed by nothing you could touch, hold, or redeem in the real world. Now here's the unsettling truth. This already happened, not in some collapsed nation, not during a revolution, not in some distant, forgotten era. It happened globally, and it happened quietly. No riots in the streets, no televised public debate, no vote, no warning. One day, the world's money was backed by something real, and the next day, it wasn't. Most people never even realized what changed. But the consequences of that moment now shape your daily life, your cost of living, your savings, your wages, your debt, your future. This is the story of the day. Paper money became an illusion, and how the entire world began living inside that illusion. What we think money is. We grow up believing money has value. We're taught money is wealth, money is success, money is the reward for hard work. But almost nobody ever asks the deeper question: what gives money its value? Is it the paper, the number printed on it, the government signature behind it? For most of human history, money had value because it was tied to something real. Usually gold or silver. Gold was scarce, durable, hard to counterfeit, recognized everywhere, and, most importantly, it couldn't be created out of thin air. As long as money was tied to gold, there were limits. Limits on how much governments could print. Limits on how much they could spend. Limits on how much debt could be created. But where there are limits, there are always those who want to remove them. And that's where everything begins to change. How money shifted from value to representation. In ancient trade, things were simple. If you wanted bread, you traded grain. If you wanted meat, you traded livestock. If you wanted tools, you traded metal. This was barter, and it worked, but it had flaws. What if the person you needed to trade with didn't want what you had? What if what you owned couldn't be stored long-term? What if your goods were large, heavy, or hard to move? So commodities like gold and silver became the standard. But gold was heavy. It was risky to travel with. So people began storing gold with goldsmiths and bankers who issued paper receipts. These receipts were easier to carry, exchange, and store. And for a while, the system worked because every paper receipt represented real gold held somewhere safe. Money was simply a claim to something real. Then someone noticed something that would change the world forever. The discovery that changed the nature of money. Bankers noticed that most people didn't actually come back for their gold. They simply traded the paper receipts. So the bankers thought, if people are treating the receipts as money anyway, we could create more receipts than gold we actually have. So they did. They issued receipts backed by nothing. They loaned these receipts to others, and when people paid back these loans, they paid in real value. Land, labor, goods, gold, all in exchange for receipts that had cost the bankers nothing to create. This was the birth of fractional reserve banking. This was the moment money stopped being something you own and became something you owe. Money became debt, and the world would never go back. When governments learned the trick. As banking expanded, governments realized something. If they controlled money, they controlled economies. If they controlled economies, they controlled societies. And if they controlled societies, they controlled power. So governments began issuing national paper currencies, still backed by gold. And the system stayed stable because the promise remained. You can always exchange this paper for real gold. But governments eventually faced a problem. Real gold limited how much money they could create. Wars required more spending. Elections required more spending. Public programs required more spending. Gold was a chain around the neck of power, and sooner or later, power always tries to break its chains. The day everything changed, 1971. By the mid-20th century, most of the world's currencies were linked to the US dollar, and the US dollar was linked to gold. $35 equaled 1 ounce of gold. But due to decades of military expansion, political spending, and social programs, the US had printed more dollars than it had gold to back them. Foreign countries noticed and began demanding gold instead of dollars. Gold reserves began to drain. The illusion was cracking. So on August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon appeared on national television and announced, "I am temporarily suspending the convertibility of the dollar into gold." The word temporarily was a deception. The convertibility never returned. From that moment forward, money was no longer backed by gold. Money was backed by nothing. Nothing except government decree. This is what we call fiat money. Fiat means by command. Money now had value simply because the government said it did. Paper money became an illusion. The invisible consequence. A silent theft. The effects weren't immediate, but they were inevitable. Once money could be created without gold, without limits, governments and banks gained the ability to print endless amounts of it. But when you create more money without creating more goods and services, prices rise. This is inflation. Inflation is not things getting more expensive. Inflation is your money becoming weaker. A loaf of bread didn't become worth more. Your money became worth less. This is a form of silent theft. And since 1971, the results are clear. Housing costs exploded. Education costs soared. Healthcare became unaffordable. Wages did not keep up. Savings lost purchasing power every year. The middle class didn't simply decline. It was engineered to decline. Because when money is unlimited, wealth moves upward. Debt moves downward. The illusion in the modern world today. The United States is over $35 trillion in debt. Japan is over Y1 quadrillion in debt. Europe is drowning in debt. Developing countries are trapped in debt cycles they can never escape. And here's the most shocking part. If money is created through debt, then the only way to create more money is to create more debt. Which means debt can never be repaid. The system is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. Why attempts to fix the system? Always fail, governments talk about budget cuts, tax increases, debt ceilings, economic reforms. But none of these fix anything because they don't address the core truth. Money itself is debt. As long as money works this way, debt must rise, inflation must rise, living standards must fall, wealth must concentrate. The system cannot fix itself because fixing it means ending the benefits of those who control it, and no system willingly ends itself. This pattern has repeated across the world: Argentina, Greece, Turkey, Pakistan, Egypt, Nigeria. The pattern is always the same: debt crisis, currency collapse, austerity, public suffering, privatization, foreign bank profits. This is not coincidence, it is a blueprint. 3 key takeaways. Money today does not represent real value. It represents debt, created by governments and banks. Inflation is not an accident or a failure. It is the mechanism that allows the system to function. The system survives because most people don't understand it. Complexity is the camouflage of power. Final warning. We are now in the late stage of this system. Debt is rising faster than economies. Inflation is rising faster than wages. Housing is rising faster than income. Savings are losing value every year. The illusion is cracking. There are only 2 possible futures: a controlled reset or a chaotic collapse. The question is not whether the system will reset. The question is, will you be prepared when it does? If you believe people deserve to understand the system shaping their lives, share this message. Leave your thoughts below, and subscribe for the next chapter. Because awareness is the first form of resistance. Illusions survive only when people remain silent. Now that the illusion is visible, the real question is, what will you do with this knowledge?